Great to be with you today. I'm John Mallett, and this is our podcast on leaving a legacy, stories about homeownership. And today we have a special guest today, incredibly amazing individual. Her name is Sher Heard. She is a real estate professional that's been in the business 30 years. She's been in California for quite some time. She has 3 children. And what makes her really separate her from the pack is she's a real leader. She's been the president of the Ventura County Association of Realtors and past president. She acts on state boards as well. She's also involved with the Hispanic real estate community as well. And so she's just been able to really do some great things. She's also part owner of Comfort Realty in Ventura, California. So Sher, it is great to be here with you today. I'm so grateful that you would make the time. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you too. That was a great build-up. Thank you.
Yeah, the first time I met you, I thought, oh man, we got to get to know Sher more.
Gina introduced us.
Yeah.
Friend Gina, yep.
Yeah, very cool.
Part of Women's Council.
Yeah, yeah.
She and I connected. And it was her energy that made me want to get to know her better.
Okay, good. Well, you really carried the torch on that. You really brought the Women's Council up even more than you did a fantastic job.
Thank you. It was a group effort. We had a good group, and Gina was one, and Vicki Cummings, a local realtor. I think you also interviewed her and talked to her before. We have a really good core group.
Yeah.
And we built on that, and we brought more ladies in and women, and it's grown.
It's really solid. Yeah. Well, very good. Well, today we have, we're in August. It's 2023, and I have spoken with real estate professionals that usually do lots of business. They do, I had one agent who did 8 or 9 transactions in the beginning of the year, really was doing well, and then it just fell off like a cliff. And so there's a lot of agents out there there are some agents that are doing well, but there's a lot that are struggling. So what would you say to them as to what you're doing right now that's helping you in your efforts and in your work?
Okay, so right now we are continuing to build on what we've been doing since we started to kind of see some shifting going on.
Okay.
So agents, if you've been in business for a while or if you study the business, which I encourage people to study what's going on, track things.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing if you don't have any tracking.
Right.
So watch what's happening and pay attention. And if you're doing that, you're going to continue to know what you need to do. And what we've done with our agents and personally, my business partners and I, is get back to some of those basics. And it sounds cliche, but if they're newer in the business, our agents don't know what basics are.
Yeah.
We have to train them. So we started some trainings. We've got some groups that are supporting one another, mentoring one another, encouraging one another. If you're newer, find somebody that's been through this before, who's been in a different market than you've experienced, and learn from them.
So when you say there's been a shift, what do you mean by a shift?
I think there's been a shift in that immediacy of buyers.
Tell me about that.
So buyers were, over the past few years, they were rushing in and bidding way over and making instant decisions. So they may overbid now. They maybe have multiple offers, so they have to go over asking, but they're not quick. The buyers are not quickly calling an agent, calling their lender and saying, okay, I'm ready, let's go, and then making the offer right away.
Mm-hmm.
You have to work with them. You have to prepare them. They have to be educated.
And what kind of things are you doing to prepare them, to help them? Because that's a big deal, because, the thing that's really interesting about what you're saying, and I have to bring this up because I just feel really passionate about it, is that when a person gets a listing, they put a ton of money into it. They pay for pictures, they pay for all this other stuff. But when they get a buyer, it's like, well, let's see if we can find you something. And it seems to me that if you can really up the game with a buyer and get to where, and listings are encouraged because when you have a listing, you're employed. And so listings are always encouraged. It's just that I'm now beginning to really see the wisdom of helping buyers elevate their game, of being able to be a buyer's agent to the point to where when you begin to work with somebody, you're going to be able to help them get their offer accepted, because that's the big deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You hit on all the important points, I think, with what you said. It's important to build a relationship and to start a process of education with the buyer. You should be a trusted advisor, and an advisor is going to give you advice. An advice person in your life is going to share with you a pathway. I just did a post with a picture of your book that you wrote about home buyers, and how I have buyers that actually have read that book, followed the steps, paid attention to the advice, and did the things they needed to do that would prepare them to buy a house. And sometimes agents get a little too anxious and they want to jump the gun and just, okay, they're ready to buy, let's go find them a house. Well, there's some education that comes in first.
Yeah.
They need to be prepared for that. They may be qualified for a mortgage at a certain level, but is that comfortable for them? They need to know what that means. They need to know what the other things are involved with owning a house.
Right.
You'll have other expenses, you'll have other things. So really, if you're going to be a really true, trusted advisor in that situation, you need to provide information and be a counselor.
Now, that's interesting that you say that, because there are some occasions where the agent says, what do they qualify for? And then they go for it. And I'm really impressed and really, really thinking about it, of what you said, is that when you actually say, are they comfortable with the payments? So what you're doing is you're not just saying, well, are they qualified? What's the highest amount they can qualify for? Let's go for it. Because a lot of times people can be qualified for more than they're comfortable paying, right? And so for you to be able to say, okay, I'm going to step back and say, are they comfortable with the payment? Well, that is a big sign that tells me it's a wonderful indication that says, well, Sher cares about me more than about getting the sale, right? When you make that kind of a statement, because not a lot of agents make that statement. They call and they say, well, what do they qualify for? And they go, I give them the number and they go, okay, great, we're on our way. But what you're doing is that you're being a little bit more strategic with your client. So take me through a little bit of the process of what that would look like when you get somebody that you're educating.
Okay, so there can be different processes, but generally speaking, if someone is from the area, then I don't have to educate them about the area. So you can take that off the table. But sometimes, and a lot of times actually, we'll get someone moving in from out of your area, and just plunking them in your car and driving them to what they're qualified for doesn't necessarily fit the bill. So I like to do what I call a lifestyle and area tour. And I don't take them to see actual houses. I take them to neighborhoods and local cities or areas that may fit the bill of the things we talked about in the assessment when we sat down and talked about what would you like in a house. And I have husbands and wives or partners or the different parties involved give me a different survey. They each take one.
Oh, interesting.
Because
so they actually have a survey you give them.
I have a survey.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
and they
cool.
fill it out. And I wait while they fill it out. I sit them down at the table and I give them each a pen and a survey. If there's children, I have a box of toys and the kids go over in the corner and play with the toys, and we sit and do the survey. And then what we do is we go through that together, and they sometimes learn about each other in the transaction.
So what kind of questions are on that survey, if you share that?
Things like, what's the most important thing to you in a house? What room is the most important to you? What type of home is the most important to you? What type of neighborhood, single family, condo? I give some examples.
Right.
And I ask for just some other input. I ask questions on the survey like, are schools part of your decision? Are activities, neighborhood activities, part of your decision? And these are follow-up questions to the actual survey.
Right.
Some of those.
Right.
Walkability. Some people want a neighborhood where they can walk to some stores and they can get to some entertainment, or they can do some things walking or riding a bike, all the kind of things that you can find out really can help narrow down what works for this buyer group.
Right. Well, I love that. And the reason why it's so interesting to me is that we've been doing this for a while. We put the comments on social media, TikTok and Instagram and things like that. And some of the comments are just brutal, right? Because they're brutal because they go, well, we don't need a real estate agent. We'll just go find something. Or we don't, real estate agents are no longer necessary because we can just go out and find our own, and we'll go on Zillow. And what you just said adds a phenomenal amount of value to the sales proposition of saying, how can we serve this client? I mean, if I had somebody of your stature that sat down with me and said, I am really interested in you as a person, and I was asked those questions that you brought up, that not only identifies better what they want to buy, but I bet as a couple or as a partner, if you're working with two people, they're probably never really filled that kind of information out before.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think most people haven't had that approach, given to them unless they worked with someone. I think in real estate, some realtors very quickly go to the transactional side of the business.
Right.
And never quite learn that it's not transactional. And the best realtors I've found are those that realize this is not a transactional business. It's a people business. I've had clients that I sat down with, it's not the right time. It's not the right time to buy, or it's not the right time to sell for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I am not going to push. Sometimes you're told to push that contract in the classes that tell you how to sell real estate.
Yeah.
Don't push a person into buying or selling a home. That's not the way it works.
Right.
This is the biggest investment of a person's life. In the average human's life, this will be your biggest investment, your biggest item of value. So take the time to learn who the person is, the persons, and get them there in a way that at the end of that, you've made a friend for life.
Yeah.
And then you've made clients for life in them and their family and their circle.
So tell me a little bit about how you handle the listing. What do you do on the listing side of the business?
Very similarly, when it comes to listing a home, the person usually thinks the most important to them is the dollars.
Right.
They want to go straight to talking about the dollars. So I usually walk in and ask them, what do you want for your house? I usually just get that off the table right at the beginning. I'd like to know where they think they should be selling their house. And then it goes off to the side, and we're not going to talk about it right now. Now let's tour your home. Let's look at what you've got. Let's look at where you're going. Why are you moving? That's the biggest motivation. Why are you moving? You're not moving for dollars usually. Maybe dollars are going to fund your retirement or, help you get the bigger house you want, but you're not moving for dollars.
What have you found that people are moving for?
It's pain points or events. Those are the two things.
So what would be an example of something like
divorce?
Okay.
Pain point.
Is a pain point.
Death of family members, pain point.
Right.
You got to sell. Births it's a little bit of a pain point because the family all of a sudden doesn't fit. We found during COVID, we found people that found a lot of pain in the place they lived didn't fit being in your house all day, every day. It wasn't a sanctuary.
Right.
Where you wanted to be. It didn't fit your lifestyle. It was just a place to hang your hat and put your head.
Yeah.
So that could be something like that. But changes too. People get older and they need a smaller home, or they need a single-story home, or they get older and their family's moving back in, so they need a bigger house all of a sudden again. They think they would need it. So a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So let's we got that a little bit. So let me ask you just a little bit about you. I want to find out about you. And I want to find out why, the question I want to ask is why you are in real estate. And the reason why I love to ask that question is that most people don't graduate from school or set their mind to be in the real estate career. Usually it finds them, there's some event that happens in their life. And I mean, the caliber of people that I've found in the real estate community is amazing. So tell me a little bit about why you got into real estate. What made you drive towards that? Because you've been doing it for over 30 years and you have a stellar reputation. So I'd like to find out why you chose that. What directed you in that direction?
Okay, so it's a really bad story. No, I'm teasing. I did not finish college when we got married and started having our children.
Uh-huh.
So I needed to go back to work. My husband wanted me to go back to work. I wanted to stay home with my kids.
Okay.
And we argued about that a lot. He wanted me to go back to work. I needed to bring money in. So I found this career, real estate, where you don't really have to work. And you make your own hours and you make all kinds of money. I'm being facetious right now, obviously.
Yeah.
I thought that's what real estate was.
Yeah.
I was going to be a stay-at-home mom that sold a house or two. That's what real estate is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Most people get into real estate thinking they're going to make a bunch of money. It's their second job. And we know the statistics say that they fall out of the business in the first year or two
Mm-hmm.
because that's not a good reason to get into real estate. But I got into real estate and found out that it was hard work. It did require, I love education. I love educating myself about things. So there was a lot of opportunity to learn and grow. And if you're willing to learn and grow, real estate can be a really good career and it can be really lucrative and it can work out really well. But you're going to work hard
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to do a lot of things that you don't love sometimes. But I found the vast majority of things to do in real estate were things I did love.
So give me an example, what that would be like.
Meeting with people and helping people. So connecting people with other people who can help them. A real estate transaction is all about the team members. It's a team sport. Real estate's not a solo sport. You have a lot of people on your team.
Yeah.
So that had a very interesting aspect to me. I love homes. My mom did interior decorating when I was growing up. So I always loved, she always was decorating a house. We moved, I can't even tell you how many times. I love decor. So just the houses in themselves was exciting.
So when we talk about this idea of, because when I talk to you, I feel like your client is more important than the transaction. And where does that come from? That's not always the norm. Where do you think that comes from? Because as you said that you got into real estate and you wanted to learn, and where do you think that comes from? Does it come from earlier growing up, or what are some background on that a little bit?
I would say so. I would say that probably comes from growing up. I was raised to believe in helping other people, always wanting to help other people, wanting to solve people's problems. I'm the oldest. My brother's 10 years younger. So having to be the caretaker, I want to take care of my client. I want to make sure they make good decisions. But also, I've always been a person that comes from a place of abundance, and I have not always had abundance.
Okay, now why is that? Because not everybody comes from that. So how did you transition to that? Especially if you did not have that, because I mean, I was growing up in the projects, so we didn't have a lot of abundance as far as the material wealth goes, but I always felt abundant, and I want to know where that started in your life.
That probably started early too with my home life. I think my father was kind of a dreamer, so I got a little bit of that from him, but I'm more of a realistic dreamer. So bringing that abundance, that, okay, we don't have everything, but we have everything that's important.
Okay. So tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the relationships, the people, the experiences we have, did a lot of experience-based activities as a youngster because, again, my parents didn't have a lot of money. So I had ice skates, I had roller skates, I had a bike. We went camping. We did things that didn't cost a lot of money sometimes, but it felt like you were really experiencing life in a great way. And you had a lot. And you had great people around. people were always important.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like when you were growing up, you had, even though your parents weren't wealthy, you still felt that you had an abundance.
I've always had that. I've always felt there was abundance. And I've noticed that if I start to get away from that, if I start to feel like there isn't enough of something or something is scarce in my life, it's an imbalance in me. It's something I need to work on. And books played a huge part in my life.
Tell me about that.
Books are where you can transform your life into anything you want it to be. That's where your imagination comes in. You can dream of a better life if you can read about it. If somebody did this, it can be done. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody built a business, it can be done.
So give me an example of some of the books and because the question I'm asking, really, the deeper question I'm asking here is how do you keep, when we're in one of the toughest, most demanding professions, and the question is how do you keep yourself in that abundance mentality, right? Because that's not easy.
Yeah.
And right now we're seeing rates higher. We're seeing that seems to be a scarcity. People are anxious. They're not sure whether they can qualify. The media is telling them, no, you're not going to be able to make it. The affordability rate is too low. You have all of this. So how, through the books that you're reading and some of the things you're doing, how do you keep that abundance? Because that is a real big deal, especially for your children and grandchildren and all the people you work with, because you're a leader.
I think, again, it's what you focus on, because what you focus on, usually when we have trials or we have difficulties, we focus on the difficulty. And the difficulty shouldn't be what we focus on, because that's what manifests. You have to focus on something else. Not that you forget this is going on. You've got a car that's broken down and you don't have money to fix it. Somehow you do need to focus in some way on that. But if you take your focus in a different direction and try to visualize what comes after that, what's really the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book I read, The Obstacle is the Way. Obstacles are how we get places. We don't get anywhere without getting.
Interesting. So give me an example of that.
Most of the obstacles I've experienced in my life have been self-imposed. We put obstacles in front of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So one was probably owning a business. I had felt over the years that I'm getting older. Maybe it's too late for me to build a business, to go in this direction. Well, that's not the only way to have a business.
Right.
I have a business partner who already had a business.
Mm-hmm.
And an opportunity came up, and he didn't come to me when that opportunity arose. His business partner left the business. I went to him. I had been working in his office. I had gone to him initially and asked to be made the office manager. Don't pay me anything. I know you don't have money to pay an office manager, but when you're not here, the agents come to me and they ask me questions because I've done this a long time and I like helping people. I want that title at least to put on my card so people realize I have some value.
Right.
And he's like, sure, that's great. I love that you do that. Yeah, you want to train some agents? Sure, do that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So I'd ask him for that. Now he lost his business partner. And I thought, I'm going to ask him if he's going to get another business partner. And I asked him, and he said, yeah, I want to get another partner, but I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush in.
Yeah.
So on. I said, well, I might be interested if you decide you were going to do that. And I think I shocked him. He sat back in his chair and he goes, really? And I was like, yeah, I think maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it would take. I don't know what you'd want, but maybe.
So what gave you that desire to do that? Because that's a big deal.
Always reaching, always wanting to grow, not letting things sit on the table undone, not having regrets that you didn't put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Those things, I had thought about it when the partner left, And also it was a little self-serving because when the partner left, it had been a little dysfunctional. And that was part of the reason the partner left.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that again. The agents, I mean, a group of them had come to me and said, let's start an office. They were like really disgruntled.
Oh, interesting.
So
Wow.
I felt like I didn't want to do that. I was happy where I was.
Yeah.
I love my business partner. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to leave.
So you were really tight with the...
I mean, it was a small number. It wasn't like the whole office was going, hey, it wasn't an insurrection or anything.
No, I know, but
the circle.
right, but that's really showing your leadership capabilities that you didn't even say I'm the leader. You were just automatically being a leader. When somebody comes to you like that, that's usually what happens. And so go ahead. This is really interesting.
Yeah, so in a way, there was some self-interest there too, because I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to stay in this office. I wanted my business partner to be our broker. I love him as our broker. I didn't really have the desire to be the broker. Mm-hmm. The things he's good at are not my strengths. So
what was the things that you wanted to contribute?
So my strengths come, I believe, in I can see down the road problems. I can see the human aspect of change and how to massage that and bring people into a conversation so that change doesn't affect them in a really negative way. So I can see that. I think I can inspire.
So give me an example of what that would look like.
We needed an office manager. We had always had, I don't want to say low-level office managers. They weren't low-level, but their skill level was not, we were not paying at a skill level where you have a high-level office manager.
Yeah.
So they were more of a receptionist / office manager.
Yeah.
Most everyone we had. They didn't have managerial experience when they came to us. They were coming to us and serving a good purpose and doing a good job at the job we had open for them.
Yeah.
What we needed, we had grown to a point where we needed an actual office manager with some higher level skills and capabilities.
Yes.
So we needed that office manager to be able to really manage at a higher level. We started the search, and it just happened that someone was looking that we knew, and she was an agent, a successful agent, but because of some situations in life and, her own situation, she wanted a little bit of security.
Okay.
And she still wanted to
sell real estate,
but she wanted some security. So you can see where there might be a conflict here, because you bring someone in who sells real estate to manage the people in your office.
Yeah.
Selling real estate, you could have an issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the person, it's just the idea, the concept.
Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen here? Agents tend to be a little scared of someone taking from them or getting into their realm where they don't belong. So I brought that up to my business partner. He goes, oh, I don't think that'll be a problem at all. I don't think she's so great. Nobody will think that. And I said, I think you're wrong. I think the agents, is it okay if I pull the agent? Do you have a problem with that? I'd like to just have a conversation with 2 or 3, especially 2 or 3 of the top agents first. So he goes, yeah, go ahead. So I do. Immediately, that was an issue.
Wow.
They immediately went straight to where my mind went, which was, well, I don't know. I don't know. She's an agent. Leads come in. My clients call on the phone. Am I going to get all that kind of thing?
Right.
So then that identified the issue for us. So when we talked to this office manager about the position, that was a hard and fast. We had to come to the realization and agreement with her that these issues, these are a hard and fast. And if this ever is broken, this trust, if you ever cross this line, it's termination. And she agreed. She was right on board. Oh, I would never do that. And we knew that about her, but we needed her to say it.
Right.
We needed to have that conversation. And then we went back to each of the agents and we talked to all the agents about it and let them know this conversation has been had. The person knows. And it is a firing offense if this happens. So you have that capability to control the situation.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's so interesting about that is that the example that you give, if I'm a buyer or a seller, I'm going to want somebody like you that's going to say, please tell me what the potholes are going to be. Tell me what the issues are going to be when, that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, in our business, that's not true. It's an ounce of prevention is worth about 100 pounds of cure. I mean, it is a massive amount of things that can go wrong. And that's really an interesting thing that's happening right now, right? And so you've really got to be on your game. So that kind of a skill, I think, is amazing. And I'm really interested in about the book that you're reading, the idea that you can become who you want to be through books. Because what that does is it gives you the opportunity to learn much more than you would have normally learned by just life's experiences. And so when somebody is representing me that has that kind of depth, that's pretty exceptional. That's really something. Okay, so in your real estate work that you're working on, what do you think, Sherilyn, we've talked a lot of things about what makes you different, but Sher, specifically, what do you think makes you different in the work that you do with your clients and with your agents in your office? What is it that makes you different?
Well, I think I've learned to be the mama bear, the advocate, without becoming the client. And that is such a fine line.
Tell me about that a little bit.
We need to, as realtors, we need to look out for the clients. We need to find, like you said earlier, the potholes. But what agents tend to do is they get very emotional and they take on that negative, whatever it might be. Sometimes the pothole in a transaction is just that. It's a pothole. We need to throw some of the gravel in it and drive on.
Right.
It's not a deal killer.
Yeah.
In fact, most times that's the case. But knowing how to do that, knowing how to find solutions, find the answers to what's going to lie ahead on this journey, and then being honest about it, but also not overreacting or underreacting, and getting along with other agents. Other agents are not the enemy. They're not the enemy. They can be an enemy, but usually they're not the enemy. You have to be careful of turning a seller on the other side of a transaction, or a seller's agent on the other side, or the flip, buyers and buyer's agent, into the enemy, because they're not.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think people might have that perception?
You're taught you have to win. You have to get the best price. You have to get the best terms. You have to get the this. You have to get the most. You have to, well, that's all true, but there's a way to get what's best for you and still get what's best for the others in the transaction. Because if you go into a transaction and you take everything and you leave nothing for the other person at all, or at least you give the impression they got nothing, you didn't win, because things happen when you do that. You get toward the end of a transaction and you need something, and that other side isn't given anything anymore, because you have ruined that.
Just kind of raked them over the coals.
You've ruined that relationship. And that's the same with the agents. The agents sometimes get to a point in the transaction where you need the other agent. You need their support to go back to a seller or a buyer and get something that needs to happen for both parties to achieve their goal, which is the closing.
Yeah.
And you weren't going to get it because you treated that person bad. You treated them wrong. And you don't do that. That's not going to work out well for you. And we live in a community where we kind of all know each other, and real estate is that kind of community. Yeah. No matter what community you live in. So if you're known as that guy, if you're known as that gal, do you remember that next time?
I know. I was just thinking that when you present an offer, or they're going to say, wait a minute, I worked with you last time. There's no way I'm going to work with you.
I mean, it's not a situation where you can say, I'll never work with you again, but you can say, I sure hope this other agent comes in. I've gotten on the phone and called that other agent and said, I need you to bring an offer. You told me you're writing an offer. Are you writing it? Because the offer I got on the table right now is from someone I don't want my seller to have to work with. But if they have to, we're going to have to. So Bria's a good one. Bring it, make it happen.
Isn't that amazing?
That happen. And I guess they don't know they're that guy when they're that guy, but it happens.
Right. Wow. I mean, that really shows a lot of depth of character. I mean, that is just incredible.
This is a business of characters.
So there's a trend where people are saying that real estate agents really, their efforts aren't worth the commission. They don't bring enough value to charge what they're charging. And in fact, in the California Association of Realtors, they now have a little box that says that the seller fills out that says, do you want to pay the buyer's commission? So they actually have that choice, or they're becoming to get that choice. And there's some heat on that. And how do you counter that? Because my experience has been that the value that the real estate professional brings is unbelievable. In fact, it is the difference between a deal getting accepted or not. That's how big it is. And yet people really don't seem to understand that. So how do you communicate that to your people that you work with?
Well, that's...
And also, what is your general feelings about it as well? Because I
agree with you. What you said, all of that is true. First of all, I totally agree with you. But I think realtors, where they fall short, probably a lot of them, is not knowing their own value. And maybe some are not worth what they get paid. In fact, I would venture to say some are not worth what they get paid. So you have to be careful when you choose your realtor. Talk to people you know who have used that person. Look at reviews. Interview. It's okay to interview agents. It's okay to tell them, I'm interviewing agents. I'm looking to buy a house. Do you do that? And then don't just fall for, jumping in the car with them and going to look at houses. Do an actual interview. Do the interview over the phone if you want, if you're not comfortable. If an agent's not comfortable being interviewed by you, right away, that seems like a problem to me. Anybody should be able to and willing to give you their value proposition, because I know mine. I have no problem getting paid what I'm worth.
Yeah.
If I were an attorney, I would be getting you off on your charges. That's the type of attorney I would be. As a realtor, I will get you a house, or I will get you top dollar for your house. That's who I am. That's what I'm about. So you have to have that attitude. You can't go in as a realtor and, well, I mean, this is what everybody's always done. Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, always,
right.
I can get over that objection real quick. So it doesn't matter what people have done or did do or what's customary.
So how do you get over that objection?
That this is what has always been the case.
Yeah.
Again, when people are talking about dollars, it's not really about dollars. It's, again, they don't want to get taken advantage of. I want to get the most money. I want to get from A to B. I want to be able to brag to my friends I did the best situation. Let's find a way for you to be able to do that. There's a way for you to do that. And it doesn't involve us right now talking about commission.
Yeah.
Right now, it talks about how we get where we need to go.
Yeah.
Where do you need to go and how are we going to get there? And why do you want me to drive you there instead of the next realtor?
Right.
And I can tell you why, but you can tell me why. It's better if you tell me. I have gone into listing appointments and very quickly into the appointment said the words, it sounds like I don't fit your expectations. And if I don't fit your expectations, I probably felt the same way about my expectations for you. We probably are not a good fit. Could I refer you to someone that I think would work really well with you?
Wow.
And you could do that with a buyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's abundance mindset. Don't waste your time working with people that will not fit with you, that you're going to have a miserable experience. They're going to have a miserable experience. It's going to go horribly. No one's going to go tell anyone that went well. You're going to be in the office complaining about it. Don't do that to yourself, and don't do it to the client.
Yeah.
Let them work with someone who can work with them.
And that's really where your abundance mentality comes. The abundance mentality is so amazing because you know that there's going to always be enough, right?
Absolutely.
You don't need more. I mean, Lynn Twist in her book, The Soul of Money, is talking about that all the time, that people that are always asking for more and more and more and more. They never get to where they want to be. It's sufficiency, it's abundance, it's already there. We have what we need as a result of what we do.
Well, if we set a goal based on money, then what happens when you hit that? If I set a goal and said, I want to make this much this year, and I set goals, but then what happens when we do that? When we set those goals, when you hit it, well, now what?
Right.
What am I
Right. Versus the kind of goal of, what other goal would you set? What other type of aspiration would it be?
I would be more in line of setting like experiential goals, where I'd like to help this many families, and I'd like to be able to achieve this milestone as far as, whatever it might be.
Again, that really comes from abundance.
Have to be in an abundant place. You cannot be dependent on your next transaction, and transaction meaning your next closing. And if you are dependent in that way, it does chain you. It does stop you from growing as well as you could. It really does. And part of that too is not getting yourself in a situation that you shouldn't be in. Don't go into deep debt don't show off because I'm this realtor who makes all this money, so I need to have this car and live in this neighborhood.
Right.
You're only hurting yourself. Be you. Where do you want to live? Okay, then live there. Where can you afford to live and have a good life? Live there. I've lived in the same house for, I'm also embarrassed to say, 35 years or 36 years.
Yeah.
It's not that we haven't owned other houses, but I like the house I've got. We've remodeled it. We're staying there for that part of life.
Right.
But then there's investments you can make then. Houses. Use that house to build you some other investment.
Right.
Use it to get you some other things. That house also put my kids through school. It also helped fund other things that we have. Real estate is always going to be a good bet.
Right. I mean, that is long game. That's right. Right.
Always a good time to buy long term, not always short term.
Right. So, and that's really what you do when you work with your clients. So you work with investors as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And knowing what their end goal is, getting to more than just, you need to know what their return needs to be. You need to know what they're going to need from that investment.
So let me ask kind of a concluding question here. What do you think is the deeper aspect of homeownership? Because speaking with you, you're not on the surface. You are one deep individual that's had reflection and has thought about a lot of things. How do you see homeownership as something that is transformational? What have you seen where it really makes a difference? Being in the right house. We got a lot of people right now that have great rates. 60% of everybody we talk to are below 5%, and most of them are below 4%. My experience that I'm starting to understand is that they're prisoners in their houses because they have such great rates. Their thought mentality, again, it's scarcity. Going, wait a minute, even though I don't like where I live, even though it's not a good location, even though it's not great for my kids in our location, even though the schools really don't be what I want, or whatever it might be, they're saying, but I have a great rate. So what is your thoughts about that, Sher?
Well, one thing I tell people is stop listening to pundits or talking heads on news programs, and stop just listening to the news 24/7, because it will all be bad. They're never the human interest story, the positive Police officer bought ice cream cones for the kids at the park story never makes the news.
Yeah.
That will never make the news. What's going to make the news is don't sell. Rates are high. They're going higher. This is happening. The housing market's going to crash. It's all going to be negative. So if you only listen to news, you're going to get all negative. But it's not based in reality. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Statistics do not back the news up.
Interesting.
So do your homework and really look at what rates do over time. Look at what housing prices do over time. Look at what your savings will do over that time. How many times, John, do you have someone tell you, oh, but I'm going to save for another year and buy a house next year?
Right.
I have a whole book full of people that I call on a constant basis who did that 5 years ago. See how it worked out for them? They haven't got a house yet.
Right. They're priced out of the market.
5 years ago, they might have been
able to do it
and done a house.
Right.
Would have been a lesser house, would have been a condo, or it might have been a smaller house than they thought they were going to go for.
Mm-hmm.
So why would we put off till tomorrow our lifestyle? My Facebook page is Ventura Lifestyle Real Estate. Real estate's about your lifestyle.
Yeah.
What lifestyle do you want? What do you want?
Yeah.
That's your house. That's where you live. That's your 24/7 thing. I mean, some people work from their house. For God's sakes, don't wait because of a number, because that number will change.
Right.
That number will go up. That number will go down. But guess what other number will go up? Your equity in the house.
Yep.
You're in the game. Get in the game. Who said you can't win if you don't get in the game?
Right.
I don't know who it was, but it was
You get
sports guy.
right. You got to be on the field. You got to be on the field.
You will never win the housing game if you don't get in. And if you got the thing that you thought was right and it's not, that's okay. Because you don't buy a house and can never buy another.
Yeah.
You can buy a different.
Well, and not only that, but you have the opportunity to do something. You know, people seem to think, well, because of the media, I can't qualify. But the reality is that they can.
Absolutely.
You know, and I mean, I know that you see that time and time again.
Absolutely. And sometimes you don't know about the programs available. Sometimes for certain people, there are programs. There are programs that give you some assistance with closing costs, or there's programs that offer you something of value that help give you that nudge.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that you can ask a seller sometimes in certain situations if your agent knows how to do it right and write an offer correctly. This house, the seller may be willing to participate in buying your loan down, the rate.
Yeah.
You do that.
Yeah. All the time. Sure. Yeah.
If your agent didn't mention that to you as a possibility, now, if you're going for the entry level and there's 10 offers, it's harder.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
That's right. It's not impossible. Very good.
I just did it on one. We closed on one entry level, and this young couple is getting into their entry level home, and it went back to the relationships that he was talking about earlier.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Sher, it has been a real honor. It's been great to have you today. What would you like to say? What is it that if there's one, maybe two things that are really important to you, what would you like our listeners to hear, to know?
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is so amazing, and I'm inspired. I told you when we talked earlier that I was thinking about doing some podcasting, and we've got a new assistant in the office, and he's going to help us with that. So I think we're going to work on that ourselves as well. So Thank you for that, first of all.
Sure.
But for buyers and sellers, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice would be, don't be afraid. Stop living in fear. Fear is a terrible place because a confused and fearful mind always says no. And no doesn't get us where we want to go. Say yes. Say yes to something. Today, say yes to something that you wouldn't normally say yes to.
Even if it's small.
Just something small.
Yeah.
Take a step. Incremental. There's another book about atomic habits. I love that book so much. Small incremental changes make a much bigger impact in life and lead to lifelong habits and successful habits a lot more than massive changes.
Yeah.
So don't try to go do some massive change. Just make a small change and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Just don't be afraid.
I love it. Thank you. All right. So here's a question. It's really what our final question is for today. Is that we get a lot of feedback, a lot of trends, a lot of comments on our social media that people are waiting for the market to crash. And it's not that they want it to crash because they want things to be bad. They want it so that they can actually afford the property.
I bet this is younger people. Are we talking about maybe younger people, like
millennials,
30s or even younger?
Yeah, millennials,
Yeah.
Gen Z. You know, I mean, when I was buying my first home, I mean, we went through, we had to work hard at it. We had to make it happen. I think it's a little bit harder today.
Right.
And so these individuals that are maybe 30, 35 years old or even younger, it really tears in my heart because a lot of the comments are, we'll never get a house. We'll never be able to buy.
They've given up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It is. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see that. And, you know, coming from a different generation, it's even more heartbreaking. And I have grandchildren. I have children in their 30s, their early and mid 30s. So I understand that. And I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, some of that probably is based in fear because we are living in a world that plays and preys upon all our fears. And social media tends to highlight those fears. We see everyone's highlight reel on social media.
Yep.
We don't see their mistakes and their agony and usually. You're just seeing the highlight reel. You're seeing everybody's more successful than you are. You're seeing, and it's for my generation too. I mean, if you're on social media, that's what you see. You only see the best. And that's not always good. We need to be honest and have honest conversations about this. But giving up isn't going to work because rents go up too.
Right.
Oh, we fall further and further behind if we don't, or what I was saying earlier, get in the game. So at least maybe talking to someone about what it would look like or could look like. Dare to imagine yourself owning a home.
Yeah.
Dare to believe that you could, because you could. I've seen people even who were homeless get to a point through a long and hard road where they purchased a home. I have a client who is a former drug addict.
Wow. Tell me about that.
I had to get through that first. I had to get through the addiction and that whole thing. And of course, he came to me after that. Mm-hmm. But he's actually someone who read your book.
Ah.
He's actually someone who read your book.
Fantastic.
But when he came to me, he had gotten his life together and he had gotten enough education to get a decent job. He worked at the county and he read your book and he realized he needed to make a little more. So he continued to work hard at his job and got a promotion and he was saving his money. And we were able to get him in. I mean, he's in an entry-level condo, but it's a beautiful condo and he has a home for his son now. And it was because he dared to dream that could happen. He dared to put himself out there. So that can be scary because somebody might tell you it can't happen. Then find somebody that'll tell you it can happen. Keep asking for help. It can happen. It will happen if we all work together to get there. There are programs sometimes that can help you get housing.
A lot.
You know, getting your house, getting your first place doesn't mean necessarily single family neighborhood house. I've sold a lot of mobile homes. My first home was a mobile home.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I bought a mobile home.
Right.
$50,000. When you're making $30,000, $50,000 was a big purchase.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that was a lot of money. and taking everything out of savings to get into that. But we did. And then a year later sold that and bought the next house. And what happened with the next house? We got to the closing of the escrow, and the escrow officer called me. I will never forget the feeling I had. She called me and she said, "Okay, we're ready to close. Just, I need you to bring in $235 and we can go ahead and close it." We didn't have $235.
Oh, my word. Wow.
We had taken everything out of savings. We had taken everything out of the cookie jars. We had cashed in like some bonds that my husband's grandma had given. Like, we had every dollar. Next paycheck, we would have money again.
Yeah.
Husband had a good job. I had a decent job. I actually had just started in real estate, so I didn't know. Obviously, my in-laws came to town. They went to see the house with us. They said, "Can we buy you guys a stove, or would you rather we just write a check, please?" That was how we closed that escrow.
Wow.
Because they wrote us a check for $500 for a new stove, and we were able to move into our house. So, these are real life things that happen. I feel the pain that a young person has. It's tough, but don't set yourself up for failure without even looking into the possibility. Ask for help. Find somebody reputable to talk to you about how you could get there, because I would guess you could get there. If you have a decent job, you could get there.
And we find that the households, there was a study done a couple of years ago that showed that 33% of people who rent can buy but don't know it. The households can buy it.
Yeah, your rents are high. They're not low. Rents are almost the same as a house payment.
Yeah. So that's an excellent comment, because what we want is we want to be able to provide the education for people to at least ask the question, what would it take? And that's what I love about your idea about the dreaming, about the thinking on the positive. And, the negativity and the fear is just too much. It's too overwhelming. And I think that today, and I don't know if I could make it through as a millennial or as a Gen Z. They're going through some struggles now that are just really difficult. And that's where it really comes down to saying, well, let's dream a little bit, because all of these influences that they have against them, and so the idea is to say, let's hope, let's see if we can make it work. I think one of the most important things that we can realize, especially as an older individual, as a boomer, is that life is a lot tougher for the younger generation, for millennial and Gen Z. I really believe that our ability to buy a home when we bought our first home was nothing compared to what it takes today. And I think that it takes, because there's been so much negative publicity about the fact that millennials and Gen Z, that you can't buy a home, that a lot of people just give up and just say, no, I'm not going to worry about it. The important thing to know is that we're here for you, and we want to help support you in navigating you through the process by just calling us. You're not going to get a bill after the conversation. We have a client that came to us. They read my book. He came in. He said, "I want to meet the author, and I want to buy a house." We've been working with this couple now for 9 months, and now they're almost ready to go, and they haven't got one bill from us. And so we really have a deep desire to give you something that a lot of people aren't willing to, and that is some education and some time and some ideas that it may be a possibility for you. And what you'll find is most likely it will be a possibility. There's so many ways that you can go about it.
That's really true, John. I agree. Agents, I think people get confused in how real estate agents and lenders and people in our business get paid. We aren't like a lot of professions and professionals. We don't have a paycheck that comes in. You don't sign a contract with us usually that immediately gives you payment. What happens is you contract with us to either sell or buy your home. And when you close that transaction, that's when we get paid. So until we can offer you the service we've said we would provide, we can't get paid. We're not going to get paid until we can help you get where you need to go. And that really puts you as the consumer, as even a younger person, it puts you in the driver's seat. You have control over your situation and you can make the decisions for yourself. And we're just here to help get you there. And we have children your age. I have grandchildren this age, and I help their friends. I've helped many of my children's friends get to where they want to be in the housing sphere. I'm a small business owner. I don't own a big brand name office. My office is a local small business, and we have 3 partners, and we all work in real estate. We don't just sit around and collect checks all day. We actually go out and help clients and sell homes. So I think, as I talked about earlier, having a trusted advisor would really help young people to get to where they want to go and to see that you can get there. It takes some planning. It may take time. It may not be overnight, but with planning and with a plan, almost like a business plan, your homeownership business plan, you can get where you want to go.